Hey guys, this is Locke. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the new Legendary Plus Evan that was released. So right off the bat, I can tell you that he's a very good PvE character, and I'm going to just very briefly touch on the PvE side, and I'm going to tell you, why I'm only briefly touching on it. So this skill is really the bread and butter of his PvE side. Basically, this skill is going to increase his crit rate and his crit damage drastically. His crit rate is basically 100%, and this is going to enable him to, deal a lot of damage to single target generators, and it's especially good for boss fights. However, everyone should have a free Legendary Plus Cosette already. The event is still going on where you can get a selected L Plus unit, and Cosette is on there. So if you don't already have her, you should be getting her, and I'm basically going to be expecting everyone to have her. So since you already have her, is it still worth it to get Evan or not? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the skills and everything. So very briefly, for PvE, most of the time you can only bring a single DPS unit, right? Like, because you're already bringing Karen, you're already going to be bringing some kind of a suppressor, some kind of resistance character, and then that leaves room only for one DPS. So most of the time, you're probably going to be bringing Cosette. There are a few instances where you can still bring Evan, like for example, in guild raids, right? Like you can only bring Cosette in one of the three guild raids, so for the other two, Evan can be a choice. There are also instances where you want to, like you're not bringing Karen, you're not bringing like the resistance character, you're just trying to burst down the boss as soon as possible. For that, Evan makes sense as well. But there is other usefulnesses of Evan that's different from Cosette. This skill also increases his health, and it's quite a lot actually. Like it increases his health by 437% of attack at level 12, and his attack is like say 10k or something. That might be like a 40k HP, like a heal, right? So it's pretty significant. So he has a lot more survivability than Cosette. However, Cosette has range, so because she has range, it'll be easier to stay out of the boss's AOE's and things like that. So there's pluses and minuses for them, but most of the time you'll probably be bringing Cosette for PvE. So most of this video, I'm actually going to be talking about Evan in a PvP light, because I think the PvE usability, while he's very, very good at it, because I'm going to assume that everyone already has Cosette, or you should be having Cosette, there's only very little that I'm going to talk about, which I already did. So when it comes to the PvP side, it's worth mentioning how he uses his skills. So when he starts, when the fight starts, he actually starts off with this skill, Nightmare Bladestorm, which I think is I think it's an oversight, because one of the effects of Nightmare Bladestorm is that it resets the cooldown of Relentless Chase. So to me, it would have made sense if he started off as Relentless Chase and then uses Nightmare Bladestorm to cool down the Relentless Chase and then use it again. But that's not what he does. He starts off with Nightmare Bladestorm, and then he uses Relentless Chase, and then eventually he uses his buff. So I think that's a bit odd, but that's how it's coded, and that's what he does. So the effects of this. So Nightmare Bladestorm, what it does is it causes stun to the target, and then it knocks it back, and also refreshes the cooldown of his second skill. And a second skill basically dashes, it charges to the target and does a lot of damage. It does like 740% at level 12. And then additionally, if the target is already stunned, which there's a high chance to be already stunned because of the first skill, it will deal an additional 1,300 damage. So this does like almost 2,000, like the multiplier on the skill is like 2,000 damage if the opponent is stunned. So it's a very high damaging skill. And then after those two skills, he then uses his buff. And his buff is interesting because not only does it increase critical hit rate and critical damage by a very huge percent, it also gives him invincible while he's casting. And what invincible does is that he's immune to being disabled, and he's immune to taking damage. It's like similar to the suppressor effects of other skills. Like for example, Ming has unstoppable while she's casting, so she can't be disabled in mid-cast. Similarly, Evan also can't be disabled mid-cast for this skill, but he also is he will also be invincible. He will also not be taking damage while he's casting the skill, and he can use the skill while he is disabled. So he can also use it to break himself free of disables as well. And then his passive is actually very, very good for PvP, and in my opinion, not so good for PvE, and I'll talk about that in a second. So for PvP, it has a high chance, it's like 30% chance of removing the target's buffs for every single normal hit, and also has a 30% chance of decreasing their attack upon basic hits. Their attack goes down to about 24% for 5 seconds. I think it's worth it to look at it, at level 20 because I think Skill Up is actually a viable build for him. So at level 20, he has a 42% chance of removing buffs and decreasing their attack, and the attack down goes to 33.8%. So I think this is a really good skill, very good passive, because a lot of enemies are using immortality accessories, or they're using immortality passives like Spike's passive or something like that. So I think this is a very good skill to have, a very good passive to have a pretty high chance of removing them every time you're doing a normal hit. But as I said, I don't think it's very good for PvE because it will not stack with another attack decreased effect. And most of the time in PvE scenarios, you're going to be bringing Karin, who has the skill already, which is a lot better. Like, not only is it a higher attack decrease, it actually is 40% compared to Evan's 33, but it also lasts for 20 seconds, whereas Evan's only lasts for 5 seconds. But if you happen to get it off because you have a 30 to 40% chance of getting it off. If you happen to get it off, you probably still will not get an additional effect when Karin's effect is there. And Karin's effect, you really shouldn't have a problem with keeping 100% uptime on the skill. So that's why I don't really think it's that good for PvE. But for PvP, I think it's amazing because we see buffs all the time, and having every single normal hit having a chance to take that off, I think is very good. So let me talk about his gear options. For PvE, something like this is fine. Like, you can use something like an attack set. He doesn't benefit from crit set at all because he has 100% crit buff from his his buff. So you want to go for an attack set when you're looking at PvE scenarios. For PvP, I think there are 2 different sets you can go with. One of them is where is it now? An attack set like this. Attack speed set. And the reason you're going for an attack speed set is because he'll be attacking more often, and each of those attacks will have a chance of removing buffs from the enemy. The second option is to go for where is it now? So I forgot which unit has equipped it, but basically it's a skill up set. I think I actually don't have it equipped. I think it's here. Yep, I actually removed it, but yeah, basically you can use the skill up set on him as well. And the skill up set, the reason you're using a skill up set is to benefit from his higher passive, because you have a higher chance of removing target's buff with the higher level of his skills. And also, this skill scales exponentially, right? Like, the damage of the skill, at level 10, it's about 1700. And then if you increase it by 3 levels, it goes up to 2100, right? So that's a 400% increase when the targets are stunned. So that's pretty significant in my opinion. So I think that's a viable way to go as well. Probably for me, I would actually most likely go with a full what's it called, like a full skill up set, because I think that's probably better than an attack speed set. But then I don't know. We're also going into like an attack speed meta where like the person who attacks first wins, right? Like we're going into that kind of thing. So attack speed set might eventually just be better overall. So I don't know. It's a toss up between the two, and for me, I'm using my attack speed set on Fodina because I want a chance to stun everybody with it, and I only have 1 attack speed set, so that's going to go on Fodina, and so the skill up set will probably go on Evan for the way that I'm running it. So is it worth it to get him or not? Well, it really depends. For us in global, we already are given a Cosette for free, so Cosette is really the main DPS that you'll be bringing in most PvE scenarios. I already touched on it. There are limited applications. One application I didn't touch on was the 8-man raid. You can still bring Evan and Cosette for that as well. But for PvE side, he's not really necessary anymore, in my opinion, except for the things that I mentioned, those side cases like guild raids, 8-man raids, and bursting the other boss as soon as possible. Those things, yeah, you can bring him for that. But for, I think, the average player, the players that's not at the point that you can just burst on a boss, but you're actually doing your content slowly and you're trying to slowly progress, I think for you guys, like I don't think you'll be, if you have both, I think you will most likely just be bringing Cosette. So from a purely PvE standpoint, I don't think there's a case for Evan, simply because you're given Cosette. So why are you going to be spending your resources trying to get Evan? And no, your resources has become a huge crunch actually because of the new masteries that were released. Now, not only are you trying to save for new units to really to invest in, but you need to figure out, okay, when am I going to get these masteries? Because some of these effects are really good, and the 150 effect is increasing your attack, HP, or defense by 5%. And I mean, eventually you will want that. So at some point, you need to figure out, okay, where am I going to invest in that compared to buying units and so on and so on. So basically, I mean, just from a PvE standpoint, I don't really see a case for Evan. And if I'm wrong about this, let me know. Write in the comments why you think I'm wrong. And hopefully the people that are watching this will also see the comments and see some of your arguments that you make. Because, I mean, I would like to provide a full-rounded opinion. But for me, I just don't see a case. Like, I don't see enough of a case. I do see some of a case, like, the things I mentioned. But for me, for the average player, that's not enough to invest in him solely for PvE. However, when you look at him as a unit for both PvE and PvP, I think then there's a solid case to invest in him, because he does a lot of things very well for PvP. He removes buffs, which is very crucial, because right now, especially in global, you see these like immortality, these rage accessories on everyone, and so having a chance to remove immortality is going to be key. Like typically, you want to bring at least one unit that does that. Like I've always seen somebody with either a Ming or a Claire or Juju or something like that, some way of removing it. So having him be one of those options, and also being a lot more sturdy, a sturdy option instead of these, is definitely good. And the other thing, one of the key things about him when it comes to PvP is his range. Because check out his skill range. His skills all have an available distance of 12 meters. Everything else, even rangers in the game, don't have that distance. Like check out even Cosette, for example. She has a distance of 10. So if you look at the others, like, Claire, she has a distance of 8. Juju has a distance of 9. If you look at Valder's Pull, it has a range of 8. Ming has a range of 8 as well. So as you can see, he has the longest range in the game right now. Eventually that will not be so. Actually, in about a month, Ace will come and his skill has a range of 20. So Evan will be outranged by Ace in about a month. But right now, this skill has the longest range in the game. So he's able to stun a target, and then after he stuns the target, he will go to them and deal an immense amount of damage, again from 12 range. So if you are a person that's using Evan and your opponent is not using Evan, it's a very high chance that you're going to be able to stun an opponent before they have a chance to react to you, and basically deal a lot of damage to them. Now suppose you're running, like somebody you want to protect, like say you're running Evan and Karen, right, on your same team, and your opponent has a Shane, and the Shane is going to target your support. Shane is going to target your Karen. But if you have Evan on your team, Evan is now able to protect Karen, and that's I guess also lore-wise that makes sense, right? But yeah, he's able to protect Karen by attacking Shane first, because he has a longer range than Shane. Shane has a range of only 10 meters. So Evan will actually be able to act first and stun Shane before she gets a chance to attack your Karen. So, that makes sense. So like, as I said, like there's a lot of, he's very viable in PvP. And in PvP, things go in and out of favor all the time. Like for example, Chris. Where did he go? Yeah. So when Chris was released, I heard people say, yeah, he was used in Korea for a while, and then he went out of favor, and then he's used again. And when somebody else, I think Espada was released or something, he combos well with Chris. So now both of them are used in PvP, and then some others fall out of favor. Like for example, Valder falls out of favor, Ming falls out of favor sometime soon, and not sometime soon, but sometime eventually. And so people fall in and out of favor all the time. And the last I heard was that Evan is being used right now in Korea because of whatever meta they're in right now, I guess. But the point is, like, he is like the things that he has makes a lot of sense. Like he has buff removals, he has some kind of surveillability. He obviously does a ton of damage, but it's single target damage, not AOE damage, and he has 100% chance to stun on his first skill as well as ultimate. And he has some surveillability because not only does the skill, when he's used, give him invincibility, but it also heals a good chunk of his HP as well. So all in all, like he is a very good PvP character. So if you're looking at him as a person that I want to invest in, because not only will I be able to use him for the you know the things here and there where I want to play with in PvE, but I'll also get a lot of use out of him in PvP. I think then there's a there's a solid case for him. And when that's the reason why I pulled for him, because I thought, I looked at this and I'm like, this seems like a really fun character to play. Like, just the skills and everything and the long range and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, seems like it'll be a lot of fun. So that's why I decided to get him. Now I've mentioned it before, but I highly do not recommend pulling from this banner. I think it's a waste because it's only a 5% chance to get him at pity, and it's 140 pulls to get to pity. I think it's a very, very low chance. You're spending like 15,000 rubies to try for a 5% chance. I think that's, it's very tough. Instead, I recommend this banner. That's how I got him, actually. I had a bunch of these moonstones saved up. So that's how I was able to pull him. I think I had like 80 pulls worth of moonstones and these tickets left over that I was able to pull him with. In case you are short, I mean, you can farm them from raids, but there's a whale option as well that you can buy the packs. If you are a whale and you're looking for a way to get him, don't just buy rubies and pull from him from the special banner. You're gonna spend a lot of money that way. Instead, you should get these moonstone packs and pull from him using the moonstone and the banner I showed you, the yellow banner. I mean, it's still a lot of money. It's like $500 to buy all of these and then pull for it. So as I said, it's a whale option. But I've heard of people spending like, say, $2,000 on rubies and pulling from the special banner and not getting him and being upset. So if you are a whale, don't do that. Pull from this banner. Pull from the moonstone banner. Don't pull from the special banner. So should you invest in him knowing that Ace is coming out and Ace is probably better in PvP? Well, that's a tough question to answer because like Ace doesn't really have much viability in PvE, as I heard. Evan has, limited viability because you have Cosette. I mean, Evan therefore has only limited viability because you can only bring one. But these units keep falling in and out of favor all the time, so it's a really hard question to answer. Maybe you should just go for the one that you like better, the style that you like better. I also don't know all of Ace's skills like fully. I don't know what his passive does. I know he has a pull. It's similar to Valdir, but the range is 20 meters instead of 8. So that's why he's such a powerful unit, Ace is. So I mean I don't know. I really can't tell you which is better. Maybe when he comes out, I'll probably make a video talking about the two and comparing them somewhat, and talk about it a little bit. But I mean, honestly, you have to make the decision for yourself, like which of the two you're gonna get. Maybe you're the kind of player that doesn't really care much about PvP, and if you don't really care much about PvP, but you still have to do it, for whatever, like you still have to do arena, right? Because you get your topaz from it, you get your rubies from it every end of every month, so you still have to do it. Maybe Evan makes sense for you to get then, because you're mostly focused on PvE, but this is a character that would work well in both. Maybe you can go for the style points, like maybe you like the way that one of these characters look, or you can even go with the playstyle, like this is his playstyle, like he stuns and then he jumps and then he does a lot of single target damage, and maybe that's your thing. So whichever would give you more fun, honestly, is the way to go. I think they're both very, very good units. However, just for a purely PvE standpoint, I just have a hard time recommending him. Like if you're only looking for PvE and you honestly just don't care about PvP at all, and I don't know, I have a hard time recommending him, assuming that you already have Cosette, which I would assume that 99.9% of players right now have, because you should. You were given that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, This is the event. Everyone is able to claim this ticket, and I highly recommend you get Cosette from that. So anyway, is there anything else I mentioned? Yeah, that's it for this video. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you have the questions or comments, or if there's anything I missed out, please let me know, and I will do my best to get back to you. Take care now, and I will see you guys next time.